pleasure to be able to welcome our musical guests. This is a group that was formed in 2007 by Ben Wolff, who's here, and with his colleagues have created a set of programs, among which is GALILEO'S Muse, which we'll be hearing today, which fall under the umbrella of listening to history. And they are interested in using music in historical context, not just in the recreation of sounds and music, though also that, but also, as you'll see, in exploring the musical context of Galileo himself. And as you'll see from the programs, some of the music here is from Galileo's brother and father. He's interested in, Ben is interested, and this whole group is interested in pushing listening to music as a way of getting at in this instance, the history of science. And it adds, I think, a wonderful dimension to the day that we've had so far, which has ranged from the history of art across issues of philosophy, the technical aspects of astronomy, and theater. So it's with great pleasure that I want to welcome the musicians here. We have on violin Dong-Myung Ahn and Aaron Brown, and Charles Weaver is the lutist, and he's going to be, all of them have instruments that are, insofar as possible, recreate the sounds that Galileo would have heard 400 years ago. So without any further delay, I want to turn the program over to Ben Wolff and to the performers of Listening to History. Welcome, and it's really a great pleasure. We're delighted that you're here.
The year is 1583. It is August, a hot summer's day in the northern Italian city of Florence. A young university student, home for summer vacation, is taking a walk through his favorite city, soaking up all the familiar sights and sounds and smells. All morning, he has been playing lute duets with his father Vincenzo, a noted lute player and composer. But now, in the mid-afternoon heat, he is more than happy to be outside. He strolls along the River Arno, watching the shopkeepers and merchants haggling with their customers. He crosses the river at the Ponte alla Grazie and heads towards the center of the city. But when he reaches the Piazza della Signoria, however, he feels a chill in the air. He looks up and sees the clouds are quickly beginning to cover the sun. A stiff breeze picks up, slamming window shutters back and forth against their frames. All of a sudden, a thunderclap reverberates throughout the city. And then the sky opens up and hailstones begin crashing to the ground. With his satchel over his head, our student races across the piazza to find shelter beneath a portico, a covered gallery of a nearby palazzo. There, he catches his breath, and he waits for the storm to pass. He waits, and he watches, and then he notices something he has never noticed before. The hailstones falling in the piazza are not all the same size. Some of them are small, like a pea. Others are large, like an egg. Yet, since the storm began, both the small and large hailstones have been falling together and hitting the ground simultaneously. Che cosa strana. How strange this is. He's puzzled because all year long, his professors at the university have been teaching that the speed of a falling object depends solely on its weight. That the speed of a falling object depends solely on its weight. This is the wisdom of Aristotle. The 2,000-year-old wisdom of Aristotle. That heavier objects fall faster than light objects. But now, watching the hailstones, he wonders, if this really is true, shouldn't he be seeing all the large hailstones falling first, and then all the small ones? After all, the storm has just started. In time, though, the storm passes, and blue sky begins to poke out from between the clouds. Our student steps again into the piazza. Now it is wet and dripping from thousands of hailstones melting in the hot Italian sun. But as he walks back through the streets of Florence, that image of the large and small hailstones falling together, that image stays with him, and it forces new questions into his mind. What happens to an object as it falls through space? And how does it pick up speed? His professors at the university seem comfortably satisfied with Aristotle's explanation. But he is no longer quite so sure. Our student is still pondering these questions as he turns the corner onto the Costa di San Giorgio, the street with his father's house. He hears music, and it's only then that he remembers. His father has invited several colleagues, 2 violinists and a cellist, to make music with him that afternoon. He hears the music even more clearly now. Obviously, he's late. It is now 1604. 21 years have passed since Galileo rushed home to make music with his father and friends. He's no longer a student. Now he is a professor, chair, in fact, of the mathematics department at the University of Padua. He is respected by his colleagues. He's loved by his students. And his name is known throughout Europe for his recent invention of the geometric and military compass. But in all this time, he has not forgotten that afternoon storm at the Piazza della Signoria. For him, the memory of the large and small hailstones falling together, that memory remains as fresh as ever. For years now, he has been consumed by the desire to understand the motion of falling bodies. As he sees it, there is nothing more essential, nothing more profound in all of nature than how objects move. And this is what he desperately wants to know. How an arrow flies from the bowstring and heads towards its target. How a hailstone falls from the sky and lands in the piazza. Even how the planets in the heavens make their celestial rounds. But most importantly, he wants to be able to describe that motion precisely using mathematics. But how will he get there? How will he do this? That is what he has been trying to figure out. An object dropped from chest height falls at an incredible rate. From the time it leaves his hand until he hears it hit the ground is almost immediate. To the annoyance of his neighbors, Galileo has repeated this many, many times. He has watched objects fall from every conceivable position and angle. And finally, even he has to admit that his eye is just not quick enough to determine what is going on. He needs to find some way to slow everything down, some way to stretch out the duration of the fall so that he can carefully and methodically observe what is happening. After much thought, after much contemplation, he hits upon a simple and elegant solution. Correctly reasoning that rolling is just another form of falling, he constructs a gently inclined plane upon which his object will descend slowly towards the ground. Va bene. Now that is already much, much better. At this slower speed, he can now really see the ball accelerate from rest until it goes off the end of his ramp. Galileo is thrilled with his ingenuity. But he quickly realizes he has only partially solved his problem. Why? Because he still has no way yet to accurately measure the increasing speed at which the ball descends. He can see the acceleration, but he can't yet measure it. Galileo ponders this problem for days. He ponders it for weeks. But this time, he is truly stuck. Then, one afternoon, Still in the midst of this quandary, he wanders into his music room. He picks up his beloved lute, tunes its strings, and begins to play. As the sound of the last few notes die away, Galileo realizes that the answer to his problem is, quite literally, sitting in his lap. He runs his hand along the fingerboard of his lute and feels the ridges made by its many frets, the looped pieces of gut upon which his fingers stop the string. It is these simple gut frets that will help him solve the mystery of acceleration. The solution to his problem has been with him all along. He will treat his inclined plane just like the fingerboard of his lute and attach a similar series of movable frets. He has this idea that as the ball descends the plane and passes over a fret, it will hop ever so slightly and make a sound that he can hear when it returns to the surface of the plane. As he begins to attach the frets, he hums a melody, some music composed by his brother Michelangelo, who is also a lute player and a composer just like their father. Finally, it's ready. He picks up a metal ball and sends it on its way. Molto bene. That really works. The frets are equally spaced. As the ball descends the plane, he can now really hear that each click is coming just a bit sooner than the one before. Again, Galileo is delighted with his success. Previously, he could only see the ball speeding up. But now, thanks to his frets, he can hear the acceleration as well. By adding frets to his inclined plane, he has found a way to divide time, continuous time, into distinct units. By adding frets to his plane, he's found a way to divide continuous time into distinct units. But he still is not completely satisfied. He is a mathematician after all, and he is after numbers, not just generalities. As he mulls over this problem, he goes again to his lute. Now, it is his inspiration. It is his favorite muse. He gazes at its fingerboard and admires the wonderful pattern of horizontal strings and vertical frets. And then he recognizes something. Something that had escaped him before. The frets on his lute are not all evenly spaced. The distance between them increase as the notes they represent get lower in pitch. He looks from his lute to his inclined plane, and then, bit by bit, the glimmer of a new idea begins to come to him. As a musician and as a performer, Galileo knows that he can keep a steady beat. He does this naturally. He does this instinctively every time he sits down to play the lute, and especially when he accompanies a singer or when he joins in an ensemble with fellow instrumentalists. This is a rhythmic skill he has cultivated ever since he was a child, taking music lessons from his father Vincenzo. He never could have imagined it back then, but now this skill, this ability to keep a steady beat, will make it possible for him to determine precisely the properties of acceleration. And here's how he will do it. Instead of the frets on his inclined plane being an equal distance from one another, he will move them further and further apart. How far apart will he move them? Well, his musician's ear will guide him. He will roll ball after ball, and listening carefully, adjust the spacing of the frets after each roll so that the clicks made by the accelerating ball are as even and as regular as if he were playing that rhythm himself. He will roll ball after ball, and listening carefully, adjust the spacing of the frets after each roll so that the clicks made by the accelerating ball are as even and as regular as if he were playing that rhythm himself. He hums another melody by his brother Michelangelo as he goes about this work. admires his inclined plane with its new pattern of placed frets. Finally, he is sure that he has found the answer to his problem, that missing piece of the puzzle he has been looking for. It's close, but it's not quite right. He thinks perhaps that the third and the fifth click are coming just a bit too soon. And so he adjusts the frets. Benissimo. This is the moment he has been waiting for. The clicks are now perfectly even. Galileo takes a measuring tape in hand to see where his ear has led him. And this is what he finds. From the time the ball is released until it passes the first fret, it goes a certain distance. When it reaches the second fret, he finds it has gone 4 times as far. At the third fret, he finds it has gone 9 times the distance. At the fourth fret, he finds it has gone 16 times as far. At the fifth fret, he finds it has gone 25 times the distance. And at the sixth fret, he finds it has gone exactly 36 times as far. Galileo no longer has any doubt about it. The acceleration of an object falling freely is continuous, and the rate of that acceleration is constant. The distance from fall is always proportional to the square of the elapsed time. The distance from fall is always proportional to the square of the elapsed time. Galileo smiles. So this is the sound of success. These even clicks of a metal ball accelerating over a series of thin gut frets. The solution to his problem has come from a truly unlikely place, but it is music to his ears. It is now 2013. 400 years have passed since Galileo revealed just how objects fall. The formula he came up with, that the distance from fall is proportional to the square of the elapsed time, that formula is still known to this day as Galileo's law. Without it, we could never have gone to the moon, and astronaut David Scott would never have dropped a hammer and feather there to illustrate just how universal that law is. It has truly changed our world. So, why does it matter how this idea was born? Why do we need to know the particular path of inspiration that led Galileo to this discovery? Why? Because the leaps and turns of Galileo's imagination should remind us that creativity doesn't have boundaries, and that insight can often come from where we least expect it. Galileo observed hailstones falling in the piazza, and he wondered how they fell. He looked with fresh eyes at the familiar gut frets tied to the fingerboard of his lute, and he thought of putting them to a completely new purpose. He trusted his internal sense of rhythm when confronted by the limitations of the clocks and timing devices of his age. And in the summer of 1612, he put quill to paper for 35 days and drew what his eyes showed him to be true. Dark spots, changing shape, and moving inexorably across the disk of the sun. The genius of Galileo was the way he looked at the world and lived his life with a truly open mind. May all of us find sources of inspiration, whatever they may be, that are as provocative and as delightful as this music that was Galileo's Muse.
Bravo. Thank you very much.